No, it was just Stephanie. I promised I would vlog about all aspects of language learning. And not just the lovely aha moments. And yes, my head's going to stay here because I'm so tired right now. The vast majority of my crazy work month of August is over. I have 1.5 more days. Well, one day tomorrow on Sunday and then Monday morning. And then I'm literally on a plane to Taiwan for a week of recovery time. I have rarely felt so frustrated with learning a language. I have never done so in such a private manner. Such a public manner. Going to a class is a very different public language learning experience than broadcasting on YouTube. And I have a presentation at NYU Shanghai in, let's see, what is today, the 26th? About 3 weeks, about the process of using the apps that I've used and broadcasting on YouTube. And at this point, I feel like the conclusion is going to be, it doesn't work. And that makes me really sad because I feel like with all the resources available, you should be able to progress to the point that you want to with a language, specifically with the Chinese language. And I know a lot of people kick at the idea of learning a language without actually communicating with real people. But if you learn the language, you can then communicate with real people. So, I mean, you'd be using it in your offline time in some way, shape, or form, right? But already I started the project with a slightly less conventional goal of wanting to read newspapers. And that already is less of a FaceTime experience. So I've kind of started the project weeks and weeks and weeks ago with the goal that was slightly different. Okay, very different than a lot of people's goals. And I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I knew my own language learning abilities. If one were to say that language learning is a skill that you have or you don't, or a skill that could be progressed if you happen to be one of those people that was naturally good at learning languages or that you cognitively were more advantaged than others, then I would be on the other end of that. And part of me had this raw moment of, I want to be the Richard Simmons of language learning. And if you don't know Richard Simmons, he's a fitness guru from the 80s and 90s, and he's still alive. And I think he just recently retired from his exercise studio, but he was like this loud, obnoxious, frizzy-haired, just really, and when I mean loud, I mean like, whoa, like giant personality kind of person. And as a child and teenager growing up seeing him on TV, it was like, oh God, whatever. But now as an adult, I appreciate his enthusiasm, and he did get a lot of people who were never going to look like models to be healthier. It wasn't like this is the ultimate goal that you're never going to reach is the goal and you're going to feel defeatist the whole time. That wasn't his audience, and he knew that, and he was just trying to get them to feel better about themselves and to get them to feel better physically while getting rid of that Jane Fonda goal, which isn't a bad goal if you physically can get there, but if you can't, it feels defeatist. That's how I feel about language learning. I honestly feel like I will never get fluent in a second language. I have every time I have done this, and that's why I think despite the fact that my teaching methods might have been liked or not liked throughout the years with my language learners in my language classes where I was the teacher, I think on some level my utter and complete respect for people who did progress visibly, my absolute respect for them, I think might have come through, I hope, because I am just floored when people can communicate in a second or third or fourth language, in a language different than what they grew up with. I'm absolutely floored. And I admire it, and I respect it, and I want it so bad I can taste it, but I can't say it. I can't say it. I can't say it. I communicate in a second language, even though my first language is technically my second language. I can't communicate in a language that's not my most fluent one. And normally at this point I would give up and say that's fine, I don't need to, there's enough translators, there's enough other things, I can just do something else and hire someone when I need help with language stuff. I mean, honestly, I could get newspapers translated and get enough of a sense of what's happening culturally and their viewpoint from the translators. I could probably get enough of a sense of it without learning the language. But I feel like this is my last-ditch attempt, and I feel like as a language teacher for over a decade, there's a part of me that feels fraudish for having not become fluent in another language despite trying so many numerous times. So I feel like although I want to throw in the towel now and be one of those expats, which I have been numerous times before, who just lives in a place and never learns the language, I feel like this is a crossroads of sort. I feel like I would normally throw in the towel now and just say, that's it, nothing's working. I feel like I hit a certain level very quickly, and I haven't been able to get past that. And I feel like I just keep rehashing how much I'm forgetting with that level that I hit very quickly, which wasn't very high, as you can imagine. So part of that is that August has been insanely busy work-wise, and it's been really hard to do more than just touch the language with that morning study that I was trying to do. And I did pretty well in keeping that going, but I don't really feel like I've gotten much further. Some of my favorite language learning resources I haven't been able to use in August, like the videos with Eva, I haven't been able to do. The language learning vloggers that I like following, I haven't really been able to watch their stuff because their videos are almost as long as mine, and I don't have the brain power after an entire day of work and travel to sit down and watch somebody talk about their 15 or 17 minutes of language learning, and inevitably some tips and tricks and things that you can do, and I'd want to take notes if I was doing them, and I just didn't have the brain power for that. So I've done what I could. I'm not beating myself up about the tasks because I've done as much as I can during this month, and I knew this was going to happen. I have a lot of vacation happening. I have a week in September, 2 weeks in October, and 2 weeks in November, which is going to be a whole month between October and November. So I have a lot of downtime happening. So I'm thinking that idea of a class or a tutor is rearing its ugly head because I don't want to stop now. I feel like I've reached a point of frustration with time and with lack of progress that I feel like if I stop now, I feel like I'm in a bottleneck, and I feel like if I can get past this bottleneck, I'll get to a point I haven't been at before. And although I feel really down about it right now, like downright freaking teary, if I'm honest with you, then I feel like if I can get past that bottleneck, that I'll reach a level of language learning patience and kind of that language learning maturity that I talked about recently, of not just giving up, of keep going, because this is a long-term plan. I never thought that reading Chinese in newspapers would take me a few months. I thought I was in it for the year or two, definitely two. We're definitely here for a year. Now it's been extended to a year and a half. Hopefully we're here 2 years. And I thought it would at least take me that long, even with translators or dictionaries or things, to be able to maneuver a newspaper. So I knew this was, and that's with help, not just reading it by myself, but reading it with other devices still. But at least then being able to maneuver through a newspaper and pick some articles and be able to view some of them. So I knew this was a long-term plan, and there's a lot more learning even after that, or during that reading, because the reading at that point reading of newspapers at that point would still be used to keep learning the language. Bottleneck. I'm at a bottleneck. I'm at a crossroads. Whatever the analogy is, I'm not feeling the rah, rah, rah of Richard Simmons. Oh, I didn't finish that analogy. So I thought if I could push through Chinese this time, since I'm here, other than August, I generally have the time to study quite a bit. I have resources around me in person that I might be able to tap into the second year if I switch jobs and actually stay in Shanghai all of the time instead of travel around China. And if I don't, there's online resources that are more organized than kind of the exploratory stuff. I've been just looking and hopping from thing to thing. So I was thinking, if me, crappy language learner, like number one, like that's my claim to fame, is I am the worst language learner known to man. Is this a claim to fame? Sorry, I'm waiting for some food to arrive, so I have to check my phone. Okay. Is this the claim to fame I want? No, but you know what? Just like Richard Simmons for obese people who couldn't get, off of a chair because they were so defeatist in their mindset and habits, I want to be a rah person. And I feel like in my language learning classes, I was that rah person to tell people, don't worry, if you don't feel like you're that person that can pick up a language like that, you can still pick it up. You just have to sit with it for a long time, and you have to do the work for a long time, and you don't have to exhaust yourself every day for a long time, but you have to just keep going. Keep working at it, you will get there. Very few people don't learn their first language. So we've got the capability to learn languages, but there's so many obstacles after that initial few years of learning that first language. And I hate doing comparisons of first language and second language, because first language, you don't really have a choice in learning it. You basically die if you don't learn your first language, because you can't do anything around you. But if you are to do a comparison between first language and second language, then we literally have 2 years of input before we start saying any words, generally speaking. And then we say words completely out of order. We create verb tenses based on the pattern, not on irregulars. Well, as far as English goes, it takes us a while to learn irregulars. And we do all kinds of really adorable things with language that as a child people say, oh, that's so cute, and then they'll correct you anyway. But as a language learner, as an adult, we make those mistakes, and people get really catty with us about making mistakes sometimes, especially in person. Oh, one of my biggest pet peeves is foreigners for example, in China, people not from China correcting me on my pronunciation of street names. I just seriously, did you not understand what I was saying? It really bugs me when people correct each other over things that you got it. There weren't that many streets with that name. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent. Richard Simmons. Since I am such a really, really bad language learner, and bad in the sense of I haven't figured out what works for me yet on the long term, and it may be what works for me is just keeping going, and I haven't given myself that breathing room and that ability to go up and down in the language learning process, even though I'm very, very familiar with following my students through it, because I had done that a lot while I was teaching language. So if I can push through this damn bottleneck and get to a point where I'm back on track, I'm studying again, and I can get into a rhythm where I'm learning again, and I can push through and someday be able to reach my language learning goal, that I feel like I could be a rah Richard Simmons-esque version for language learners who are not terribly good at learning a language. There are lots of videos of polyglots who put in a lot of effort, but they do seem to be people where languages seem to stick better than most of us. I feel like most people, even if they use the tips from the polyglots, which I'm using, even if they use that, it would still take them longer to get to their goal. So I do feel like there is something to the natural abilities. I mean, a lot of people have natural abilities in different areas. I do not have the language learning natural ability that would push me to do this faster, better, more naturally, blah, blah, blah. So I feel if I can get there, I can use my 10 plus years of language learning experience with my new language learner experience, and I can be an even better language teacher, and I could be, even forget classrooms, I can be that person to one of those people to walk people through the process, not just of the grammar of things and the vocabulary of a language, but the language learning process. And that process is something that isn't really talked about very much in language learning classes. We talk about the language, but we don't really talk about the ups and downs and the frustrations and when, how, whatever you learn stuff. And I feel like, that's why a lot of people drop out. You have a lot of beginner students, a lot of elementary students, and very few intermediate and advanced students, because this process is really hard and it's really long. And I feel like if there was more information and more people talking about, which there are more now than there were 10 years ago, but I feel like if there were more people and if maybe it was outlined as if the process is the same between all of us, I don't know. But I feel like if I can push through this, I can add this to my teaching experience and somehow help people, normal people, not super great language learners, but normal people learn languages better. That's my Richard Simmons moment. And I don't mean that as a diss to him at all, because I completely and utterly respect what he was able to do for people who were really frustrated with their lifestyle and their body and their food choices. And if I can do that for languages in any way, shape, or form, that would be amazing. That would make all of the crappy language learning jobs that I had, where my visas were iffy, my pay was messed up, I rarely got vacations, I worked way too hard, I brought work home with me, I slept, and breathed my work for ages and ages and ages. All of that sacrifice, all of that work, all of the information and knowledge and the conclusions that I was able to come to in doing all of that work, I could then combine that with what I'm doing now as a learner, and I could help people learn languages. But in what way? I'm not sure, but it's about the process. And the process is really, really interesting to me right now. The language would be interesting if I felt like I was learning it, but that's not happening. So I just want to keep an eye on the end goal, and the end goal is, yes, it's reading newspapers, but it's also that bigger mama bear end goal of language learning, rah-rah, cheerleader, Richard Simmons-esque language learning equivalent. I need to keep that in mind, because the frustration, the language blocks, the time anemia, that will all finish in 2 days. And then I'll be back on the, whoa, guess what I learned today thing. And I need to remember that, and I need to push through. And I think this is definitely another part of that language learning maturity that I talked about before. And probably just maturity as a whole. I'm a Capricorn, I mature late, I do things late in life. Look it up, it's true. I'm blaming my horoscope. Because God forbid I should take responsibility for my own actions. No, I will completely take responsibility for my own actions. I do things later in life. I do. I graduated with my bachelor's at almost 30. I did my time I went overseas for a long stretch about a year later after that. So, I mean, I do things a lot, as people generally do gap years when they're like 18 or 19, and thank God I looked young, because I fit in pretty well the first few years that I was doing it. But I do things later in life, and so I'm learning a language finally at 45, or I'll probably turn 46 before I get to a place where I can say I have any level of fluency in Chinese. I can guarantee you that, because it's September next week, and my birthday's in December, and I will be 46. And is that the time that most people learn their second language fluently? Nah, probably not. So, but that could be another selling point too. Look how long it took me to finally get this. I can help somehow. And I don't know what that somehow is yet, but I feel like there's something in that somehow. Is it in technology, making something, I hope, to help people learn languages better? Or is it in something like this? I don't know. But I feel like that's the carrot right now. The newspaper thing is super, super, super carrot. That's the first carrot. But the chocolate carrot that comes after that combines my past and my present struggles and language learning stuff, that's the chocolate carrot that hopefully doesn't taste like carrot, because chocolate and carrot together don't taste very good. But I like chocolate better than carrot, so we'll say that that's the chocolate carrot. I'm now sort of rambling. So I feel better having said all this. I feel better having thought about the long-term goal of this, and I feel better having done the Richard Simmons analogy and the bottleneck analogy, because I do feel like this can't be a permanent state of I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. This will end, and I will progress. I already have an online course that I've been looking at for months, and I just pulled up the website, and if it looks like something I can do with a laptop, with the vacations that I have coming up, I'm literally going to buy it today and start on Tuesday. So yeah, so I've got things in place. I just need to get over feeling defeatist about this. And so that's that. Hopefully my next video will be back on the positive train, and I will have more of a plan as to how to progress, so that by the time my presentation hits, if nothing else, I will not say, this all sucks, I've learned nothing, go to a class. Because that is not what I want my goal, what I want my takeaway to be from that presentation. I want it to be more about the process, and I want it to be more interesting than go to a class. Because we have been going to classes, we have been going to language classes, and I feel like there could be another way. I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll find out as time goes on. What day is it today? I'm doing days, not weeks now. It is August 26th at ridiculous o'clock in the morning. Actually, it's 10:30. It's not that bad. I'm just tired. All right. Thank you for watching, and more later. 再见.